over and over again. There isn't even statistical variation. 95% confidence level means that 5% of the time you're going to get a crappy poll. We hardly ever see that. It's like they're telling us we're watching a basketball game where every play is a jump ball. Somebody's missing something. What I think they're missing is a massive shift in voter registration underneath all of this. 31 states have voter registration by party. 30 of them in the past 4 years have seen movement toward Republicans. Miami-Dade County is now voting more Republican. Iowa was +1 Republican. It's now +10. And yet we're getting these surveys that I think are off base. Somewhere, somebody is missing something. I think I'm not going to call it a wave, but I think there's a wavelet out there of Republican enthusiasm and registration. If I register to vote Republican, whether I'm switching or new, what am I going to do?
All right, guys, so we got to talk about this bombshell story that was shared via Visagrad24, which I believe is like a European news journalism outlet. But anyways, it involves this trader called French Trump Whale, who betted $40 million of his own money on Trump winning the 2024 election against Kamala Harris. Now, that is a whole lot of money to bet on a presidential election. And he's going to explain why he bet that much money. And part of the reason why is because he basically thinks that the polls, are rigged, right? The liberal media polls that essentially show the race as a tie as of right now, which again, it is election day. So people are voting. We're going to see if these polls are actually wrong. But again, this guy believes that the polls basically are being rigged in favor of Kamala Harris, and that we should expect the same thing that happened in 2016 and 2020 to happen, which is that the share of the vote that is being accounted for Trump is being underestimated. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into it.
A few days ago, a mysterious trader called French Trump Whale made headlines internationally for allegedly tampering with predictive betting markets to give Donald Trump an edge in the polls. I tracked down the mysterious French trader to ask him why he bet $40 million of his own money on a Trump victory, and to ask him whether this is an ideological play or if he's just keen on making money.
I'm not supporting Trump. I'm just observing that Trump has a 90% chance of winning this election and a 65% chance of winning the popular vote. That's why I bet on both. The polls are really, really different from the odds in the predictive markets. It calculates something totally different. One is calculating what are the intentions of the people to vote. The other are bets made by real people with real money about who they believe the winner will be. My name is Theo. I'm a French trader and investor. In August, I started to realize that media outlets are making the same mistakes they made in 2016 and 2020, underestimating the Trump vote. Why? Because again, it's underestimating the shy Trump vote effect. I deep dive into the polls and I realized that most of the polls are definitely skewed to the advantage of Harris. I also read a lot about what we call the neighbor vote effect.
Can you show us the math that explains how you saw this skew in the polls?
New York Times yesterday published 3-4 the surveys in some states, in the swing states, and one was very astonishing because it was a clear outlier on real clear politics. It's in North Carolina, which is a very solid Republican state, and this showed that Harris is ahead 2% in that state. I'm going to show you what I found out and how skewed this poll is. Here you have a cross-tabs of a survey that was released by New York Times, Siena, for North Carolina, with likely electorates. They basically sampled 1,010 number of respondents, 1,010. In 2020, we can see that 441 voted for Biden and 349 voted for Trump. Let's calculate the percentage based on the respondents. 431 divided by 1,010, you have 42.6%. 349
49.
divided by 1010 is 34.5%. So first, what we can see is that the percentage here that they display is wrong. It's fake. They display 42 and 40%.
Sure, so that's a very big difference.
Why they did that? It's because for people who are looking at these numbers, they don't compute like I did. I'm probably the only one who computed it. Because people are seeing 32 and 40% and they say, oh, you know what? It's quite fair. They polled for only 2% more Biden voters, 22 voters. Now let's compare with what happened in 2020. What did the people really actually vote in 2020 in North Carolina? 49.9 people voted for Trump and 48.6. So basically 1.3% of people voted more for Trump. And if you compare with who they polled in this survey, you have here a difference of 8%. So basically, they're off by 9.3%. They're unrepresentative. By 9.3%, it's a huge skew to the advantage of Harris.
Is this the only skew that you have, or can you demonstrate even more skews
No,
in
they are,
these polls?
they are first, this skews is in all New York Times Gold straps. And I have another category where I can show you that they also use another skew. It's with what we call race education. Race education is what? Is measuring, for instance, the intentional votes of whites, people
Who have college,
who have
or
college,
don't have college.
and whites who don't have college. Exactly. So let's calculate. Let's do exactly the same calculation. Again, the percentage are fake. 30% is not 35%, and 40% is not 32%. We can see that they sampled more white college, but white not college.
Yeah, so basically they are trying to sample more voters who are likely to vote Democrat than they are for voters that are likely to vote Republican, okay? And that skews the results in favor of Democrats. Now, the New York Times came out and admitted that, yeah, we have a hard time sampling Trump voters. Now, that would suggest that they're not off because they're purposely trying to skew the polls in favor of Kamala Harris. They're just off because they have a hard time polling Trump voters. But in my opinion, I personally believe that a lot of these polls are psyop polls. Like, I really believe that a lot of these polls are designed to try to manufacture reality. And this is something that I have observed over the past 2 or 3 months, especially of this presidential campaign, watching Kamala Harris get into the race and all of a sudden her numbers just skyrocket. And it's like, no. Well, before she got into the race, she was the most disliked vice president in modern history, right? I think she was more disliked than Dick Cheney, which is hard to believe, okay? So how did she go from that to all of a sudden being so popular? Again, I think it's because a lot of those polls that were being put out there were polls that were skewing things in her favor because they wanted to manufacture a reality for Kamala Harris that didn't exist, right? They wanted to manufacture this reality that she had more support than she actually had as a way to kickstart her campaign. And that is why you've seen that the polls are now a lot closer than they were when Kamala Harris first launched her campaign, when she first was getting the momentum, because I don't think the pollsters really want to be that wrong. Okay, now they don't want to come out here and say outright that Trump is winning, that Trump is dominating Kamala Harris, which again, we don't know, right? That's the point of me doing these videos. I'm doing these videos so that after the election, regardless of what the results are, I can look back and say, this was right, this was wrong, and learn from it moving forward, right? Like, that's the whole point. But I'm just saying that if what this guy says is true, basically what's happening is that pollsters like the New York Times, is not just that they have a hard time polling Trump supporters, but they're just going out of their way to try to skew the polls in favor of Kamala Harris to manufacture a reality. You guys remember how over the past week, as Trump was gaining momentum, all of a sudden last week, again, right before the election, that momentum stopped in the polls, and Kamala Harris had a slew of good polls coming out for her, despite the fact that she hasn't really done anything to take back the momentum, right, at all. And then look what happened as a result. the betting markets got a lot closer, right? You had a lot more people thinking that, okay, well, Kamala Harris has a chance. And what you're witnessing is the psychological effect of the polls, right? So if these polls start to come out and they start to show Kamala Harris leading or having a much better chance of beating Trump, that affects people psychologically, right? And the betting markets are simply a reflection of the psychological attitude of voters, right? In regards to who they think is going to win, okay? That's all it is. And we saw the effect of that when it came to the Iowa poll that came out showing Kamala Harris leading Trump by 3 or 4, which again, I am very fascinated to see if that is anywhere close to reality, right? But the whole point really is to affect the psychology of voters. It is to try to manufacture this reality that Kamala Harris has this momentum and that although the race is close, Kamala Harris can beat Trump, which motivates people to go out and vote, right? That, I think, is what they're trying to do. That is the psychology that they're trying to manufacture in these Democrats who, let's be honest, for the past 2 to 3 years, they've been depressed, okay? There's been a whole lot of infighting on the left. A lot of the younger voters, they're just not as excited to get out and vote anymore. The Democrats have done a horrible job at running the country. Like, they need hopium, okay? So a lot of these polls are just hopium for Democrats. And again, we will see after the final election results in regards to how accurate they actually were. But again, this guy basically said, look, I'm going to bet $40 million of my own money that they're off, right? And they're off by a lot, which is crazy to think about.
Sure.
And by a lot.
Does this replicate across other
It's
states?
replicated across other states. I'm at the job. We don't have a time, but I wanted also to show you the results in Wisconsin, sure, which is totally skewed. I made also the job on Michigan, which is totally skewed, in Newtown, Siena. And I encourage you really to go to the Siena website, check the crosstabs, make the work I did, and you will be astonished. I tell you that Trump will outperform the polls, especially these polls, by 4 to 5% minute.
So, Theo, you're not actually a gambler, you're just a trader.
Yes, that's the difference between a gambler and a trader. I am a trader because I'm based on rationals. I'm based on analytics. I'm not supporting Trump. I'm just observing that Trump has a 90% chance of winning these elections and a 65% chance of winning the popular vote. That's why I bet on both. And that's why I think he will win both.
What happens if he loses?
If I loses, I would accept that I was wrong in my analysis, but I really doubt about that.
May the odds be ever in your favor.
Wow. That's nuts. That is absolutely insane to think about. $40 million, which I mean, I guess for this guy, probably isn't that much, but it's still a lot, right? It's still a lot. And he's saying, well, he's doing this because the polls are rigged and they're underestimating Trump just like they did in 2016 and 2020. It just so happened that this time the polls are essentially the best they've ever been for Trump. And he's still saying they're underestimating Trump's support. So again, I like to do videos like this just to go back and document and say, hey, was this guy right or wrong? Okay, let's see if this guy's analysis is to be believed. And again, if this guy turns out to be right, I think that we have to start asking a whole lot of questions about these so-called pollsters and whether or not they are ideologically influenced. Like, what is the actual goal of these pollsters? Is it to capture the current state of the race, or is it to essentially influence the outcome of the race in the direction that they want? And I personally think that it is the latter. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.